Hi guys, I'm Judy Elmore and I'm a freelance editor with Black Wolf Editorial Services. Over the past couple of weeks, I have found myself in various different conversations on social media about various different aspects of editing and writing and the publishing industry as a whole. There is a couple of misconceptions out there that I feel I have to dispel. We're going to take this one at a time and we're going to look at what the misconceptions are, where the root of them have come from, and of course, the truth of the situation. So let's get started. This one is recent, as in it's in the last couple of days. There was someone who posted something on Twitter that basically said you have to hire an editor to get a traditional contract. The reality? No, you don't. That is entirely false. You do need to edit your work. Yes. And you do need another set of eyes to help you with your work and make it just that much better. Let's face it, sometimes we all get too close to our stories and we can't see the forest for the trees. But you know what? If you've got good critique partners and good beta readers, that could be all the eyes that you need to help. You do not need to mortgage your house to hire a freelance editor if you're heading down that road of traditional publication. There's no need. Self-publication versus traditional. Well, there has been this argument for years as to which is the better path to go. Is it better to be traditionally published or is it better to be self-published? At one point in history, it was better to be traditionally published, but that is not the case anymore. In fact, both paths have their positives and the negatives, and both paths are just as good as each other. You do not need to be trad and you do not need to be self. You can be a hybrid if you want. Different personalities are better suited for different paths. To decide what is the best one for you, you need to look at your long-term goals. If your long-term goal is to just make money from your writing, you might be better suited heading down the road of self-publication because you'll see faster returns. But if your long-term goal is to be in the bookstores, and I'm not talking about, your independent bookstores, I'm talking about your mainstream chain bookstores that are found worldwide, then you will definitely be better off heading down the road of traditional because that is the way you need to get into that bookstores. But you need to look at the goals, and everyone's got their own personal path. I myself, I will not judge anyone on what path they've chosen because it is a personal choice. So I support writers who go down both paths, and I just make sure that you understand what little hidden traps might be sitting in front of you. I myself am a hybrid, so I do understand what you're looking at. Self-publication, not needing editing. Hello. If you're self-publishing, editing will be your biggest expense. You need to sink money into it. If nothing else, you need to hire a copy editor, a good copy editor. You need to follow their advice and actually apply the edits. If you choose to publish your books without any professional editing whatsoever, expect people to comment on it because you know what? We can tell when you haven't edited your manuscript. Trust me, we can tell. Then we have the argument of developmental editors versus copy editors. This is something that I always find myself in a situation where I'm talking, and it's normally to another editor, and there are all these arguments about who's the better one. It's like, well, we're both needed. A copy editor is different to a developmental editor. And if you look through various different blog posts on my feed, as well as previous videos that I have put out, part of the What Next webinar series, you will see that I'm talking, there is so much difference between a developmental editor and a copy editor. There's big differences involved. It is vital that you hire the right editor for the right stage of editing. Please, I beg you, do not hire a copy editor before you hire a developmental editor because whatever work the copy editor has done, it's going to be undone by your developmental edits. And whatever you do, do not hire someone to proofread your manuscript before you hire a copy editor because again, whatever work the proofreader has done is going to be completely undone by the copy editor. Okay, if you hire a developmental editor within your editing process, please acknowledge the work that they have done. This is where it's a bit of an interesting conundrum for people like myself. I do not offer copy editing services within my own company. I am a developmental editor, but for anyone who's heading down the road of traditional publication, the editor who will get editorial credit for that work will be the editor who works for the publishing house. And within self-publication roads, most of the time, the editor who gets the credit is the copy editor. So for the likes of me, who's the developmental editor working with early stage manuscripts, yeah, I tend to get overlooked. I'm okay with that, but I do ask, if you do hire a developmental editor, that you at least acknowledge them and give them credit for the work that they did. Manuscript assessments and critiques. Now this was an interesting situation that I found myself in, because it was a potential client who was looking for a developmental editor, and they were looking for a developmental editor specifically. And of course, I responded. And I found myself in this situation where they were looking at the services I offer, which is primarily manuscript assessments. And the next thing I know, I'm basically being accused of not being an editor. It was a very awkward, sticky situation. Basically, okay, your manuscript critiques and assessments, yeah, your critique partners are great resources, and they're going to give you critiques and assessments as well. But they're not going to have the trained eye that a professional editor will have. The manuscript assessments and critiques that you get from a professional editor, they will be loaded with things that you need to potentially change. In a way, that manuscript is going to be bleeding. It may not look like it because there may not be inline comments, or you might not have annotations within your file, and it might be just a report that you get. But those reports will be incredibly detailed, and they will come back with a lot of information and a lot of things, a lot of different areas that you need to examine. You're not going to get the same sort of thing from someone who is not trained as a developmental editor. The way one of my clients thinks of it is that the more comments that they get on their reports is the better job that the editor did. And it makes me feel very good when she thinks of it that way. I've also recently come across this one as well, that editors who are not writers, we shouldn't be trusting them. Hello. That's not the case. Not all editors are writers. I am, but not all of them are. I know quite a few editors who aren't. A good editor has a trained eye. They know what they're looking for. They know exactly how language and structure works. They know what they're looking for. This will be particularly the case for copy editors. A lot of copy editors are not writers themselves because they don't feel comfortable heading down that road. My personal developmental editor, he is currently unpublished, yet I would trust his knowledge about the industry and about story structure and where stories should go. I would trust it more than I trust my own. And that's saying something, because I'm a trained developmental editor myself, and I would trust his word over mine, especially when it comes to my own work, any day. He is a writer, yes, but he's unpublished. My personal copy editor that I use for my nonfiction publications, she has an eye that I could never match, but she is not a writer. She does not write fiction. She doesn't even really write nonfiction, but her eye for detail is amazing, and I could never match it. So just because an editor is not a writer themselves does not mean they don't know what they're doing. They do. As long as they're trained, they know exactly what they're doing. This was an interesting comment. There was quite a few people that are always working towards the bestseller lists, like the New York Times bestsellers or the America Today. And some people strive for whatever reason, the Amazon bestseller list. I don't know why, but they do. Just because you make it on a bestseller list doesn't mean you've made it. The reality of the situation is you are only as good as your last book. Even those who have been publishing for years with huge backlists will encounter this issue. I can think of 3 writers just off the top of my head who have got huge followings and have been doing very, very well, traditionally published bestseller lists, and have been there multiple times, yet their last books actually irritated and angered their fans. How their careers are going to cope with this backlash, I don't know, because it's only been recent that this has happened. But this is something that every writer faces. You're only as good as your last book. And there was this conversation I had. There are many different contests out there. Some of them are a bit dodgy, but many of them are reputable and can actually help launch a career, especially if you manage to score the right award. Because of the way the internet has changed and because of the changes in the global economy, many of the contests which were once free now have an entry fee. And there are people who are under the impression that just because it has an entry fee, it is not worth it and it is the worst idea that you can do. That's not true. Not anymore because of the way the global economy has moved. What you need to do is you need to look at who is administering the contest and what the prize is. In some cases, you are going to be paying in the order of, I don't know, $30 to $40, maybe even $50 for some of these contest entries, but the prize and the prestige that goes with it is unimaginable. I'll give you an example. I know within Romance Writers of New Zealand, we have quite a few contests for our members. And one of them, which is the most prestigious award that you can get as a New Zealand romance writer or an Australian romance writer, is the Koru Award. The Koru Award, to apply for this, to put your name in for the running, it is a fee. There is a fee associated with it. And I think it was in the order of about $40. One of my writing buddies, she applied for the Koru Award and she walked away with 3 of them. She is now being approached by publishers and agents to actually do work for them. They're coming to her. The prestige that she has gotten from this is amazing. Then you also have the NZSA, New Zealand Society of Authors. They ran a contest last year. They run it every year. That is working with Hachette. And the prize is that if you get it, you get 1 year of mentorship with a Hachette editor, one working specifically with Hachette Australia. That's an editor for a year working on your manuscript from one of the big 5. There was a fee to enter that contest. It was worth it, people. It was definitely worth it if you can get it. To go through and just say, oh, it costs money to enter that contest and I'm not going to enter it because it costs money, that you are cutting yourself off from a variety of different possibilities. Take a look at who's administrating them and what's the prize. If you have any questions about any of the things that we've talked about or any of the things I've talked about previously, please feel free to contact me. And you can find me on Twitter, and that's at blackwolf_ed, or you can find me on Facebook, and that's Black Wolf Editorial, or you can find me through my website, and that's blackwolfeditorial.com. Alternatively, if you are interested in my personal projects, you can find me on Twitter, and that's at Judy L. Moore, or you can find me through my website, my personal website, and that's judylmoore.com. Meanwhile, I look forward to helping you take your writing to the next level.